I always take Master with me, you know. Well, you have heard what the subject is. And this subject was very nicely covered last night by Marini Mata and Sri Dayamataji, so I really have nothing to say. So what I want to do, I had a hunch that would happen. So what I want to do is make it simple, or perhaps not so simple, and review with you some of the main points of Master's teachings. Not all, it's too vast a subject, but some. And that means now that to most of you, there will be nothing new, but I have found that it is not enough to have just an intellectual understanding of a truth. It has to be deeper. And only then are we able to really apply it. And so, it's going to be pretty heavy at times. I hope you're still awake and ready after this day. But I really want to help you to understand Master's teachings, and especially meditation and the technique, so that you're getting more and better results. Just the overall, I think the most important thing that we have to understand, and Master started with that point, with his first beginning as a world teacher. When he gave that first lecture in Boston, 1920, at that Congress of Religions, and the first point was, do you know what it is? The answer to the question, what is the purpose of life? And the amazing thing to me is that the world today still does not know. And here we are, doesn't it stand to reason, being in this gross material world? That's bad enough, isn't it? Now, common sense said we should at least know why we are here, isn't it? But the amazing thing is that people don't even ask, most of them. And those that do ask usually get the wrong answer. There was, not so long ago, there was a psychologist here in Los Angeles who had a very popular radio program. First, talking a little bit on an aspect of psychology, and then people could call in with questions about their personal problems. And one time I listened to that, and a woman called in and asked, "I'm so confused. Could you please tell me what is the meaning of life?" And the answer she got was, life has no meaning. And then she was told life gives you opportunities, the opportunities to work and to earn money, and from that money you can use it to have pleasures. Life gives you opportunities to have relationships, but life itself has no meaning. And that is not an isolated case. There is a psychologist, professor of psychology at the University of Massachusetts, Susan Whitbourne, who made extensive research, beginning in the mid-60s, up to now. And I want to read to you, this is just a very short article. what she found. She found that Americans, and that is not only Americans, that is worldwide, have lost a sense of personal meaning. They are working more, but far more full of despair. Despair. Why? Desperately seeking fulfillment and never finding it. She tested and retested people of all these years and found a steep decline in integrity, a personality factor relating to wholeness, honesty, and meaning in life. At first, she thought this applies only to the yuppie generation of her study. People with a notoriously empty lifestyle, focused on wealth and possessions. But she found the same symptoms in all groups, meaning in all levels of society. And she concluded it reflects a general society-wide crisis of morality and purpose affecting adults of all ages. Purpose of life. And she says the scores on life satisfaction are so low, they couldn't go any lower. Isn't that amazing? And that's why the world is such a mess. People do not know what the purpose of life is. And this world will not change unless this whole thing is turned around. Do you see how important it is that people find our Guru's teachings? And so what is the meaning of life? What is the purpose? Master gave it very clearly. It may be tough, but he gave us the answer. He said, we are superficially, outwardly, we are all different. We have different roles to play, we have different duties, we have different desires. But is there something underneath of all that, behind all that every human being wants or needs, without exception? Well, he said yes, and this is way back. That comes from the higher ages in the scriptures of India. Yes, there is. Namely, every person wants, needs two things. And these two things is just like two sides of a coin. One is the freedom from all aspects of suffering and want. And the other one is absolute joy, eternal joy, absolute fulfillment. And that includes absolute love, absolute peace, absolute wisdom, and all those things. And that is God. Now, where do you find that? This absolute fulfillment cannot be found in anything or anyone in this world or in any outer condition. It's an impossibility. There's a little story. Some years ago, there was a very popular TV program. I didn't see it. I don't watch TV. But I read about it. It was Art Linkletter who interviewed little children. And one time he asked this little boy, did anything exciting happen in your life recently? And he said, oh yes, I had my 6th birthday yesterday. And then he was asked, how did you celebrate? Tell us. And the boy said, well, I had cake, and I had ice cream, and I had cookies, and I had candies, and I had milk, and I threw up. And there it is. This is in a nutshell the outer life. We cannot escape it because this world is built on the principle of duality. Pleasure and pain, good and evil, darkness and light, life and death. Therefore, it is mathematically impossible that we can find fulfillment in anything in this world. It's not possible. And in one of the old writings of India, it says, in relationship with that, know it now, or after 1,000 incarnations. Meaning, do you really understand? Do you really seek where it can be found? Or do you want to go on and look in the wrong places and be frustrated, and as this woman said, this professor of psychology, full of despair? And this is exactly what you see in the world today. Despair, frustration, and anger. Because people are desperately seeking that fulfillment, and they are seeking it in the wrong place. It's pretty heavy, isn't it? I didn't make that setup, mind you. God did. Because He wants us to come back to Him. You'll never be satisfied until we have Him. And then comes the next question, next important point. And that is, where is it? Where? And actually, God is omnipresent, all-pervading, right? But if we are trying to find that bliss in external things, we'll never find it. Why? Because if we are going out searching, we are using what? We are using our senses, we are using our mind, our intellect. And the saints of all the great religions have said the same thing. The senses and the human mind are not capable to contact God. They are too limited, they are too gross. Therefore, we have to go inside. And through the intuition of the soul, there we find it. We have to go inside, and there God is waiting for us. And that is why Jesus said, most basic thing, the kingdom of God is within. Saint Teresa, one of the great Christian saints, wrote to her nuns, she said, remember what St. Augustine said? He had searched everywhere for God and finally found Him within himself. Then she said, remember that it is most important to understand this truth, that the Lord is within us. That means, if God doesn't mean anything, say, bliss consciousness. Because the Master said, God consciousness is bliss consciousness, and that includes everything else. A Master, in his autobiography, he quoted one of the great philosophers and masters centuries ago, Shankaracharya, who said outward rituals cannot destroy ignorance because they are not mutually contradictory. Ignorance means here body consciousness, sensory consciousness, mortal consciousness. He says only realized knowledge, meaning the experience, can destroy ignorance. And the Master went on, he elaborated on that, and he said the human intellect has no answers to the basic questions such as, who am I? What is behind this universe? Who is its maker? And that is why he said the rishis, meaning the ancient sages, have evolved yoga as the spiritual technique of inquiry. Now, yoga, this is not only in India, this is the essence, really, of all the great religions. Like I mentioned, St. Teresa, in her writings, she wrote about the different stages of prayer: oral prayer, mental prayer, prayer of recollection, prayer of quiet, prayer of communion, prayer of union. That's yoga in Christian terminology. That's yoga. This is meaning going gradually within and in the inner stillness finding the perception of God, and then comes union, meaning expansion with the infinite. It's yoga. She also used a very interesting illustration. She said, just like a turtle withdraws its legs into the shell, so we have to, if you want to find God within, we have to interiorize, withdraw our faculties and senses inside, and there is God. And interestingly, Lord Krishna said exactly that same thing, the same illustration of the turtle, of going within, in the Gita. And that was 5,000 years ago. And the Gita was not translated into any European languages at that time when St. Teresa lived. Truth is the same, it's one. There is another one. He is not very well known, but he was one of the great reformers of the Carmelite order in the 16th, 17th century. Jean de Saint-Saëns, he said the faculties are there in an arrested condition. All is fixed upon God. All is merged. And that is yoga. That's exactly the process. This man knew what he was talking about. But he did not say how to do it. And St. Teresa did not say how to do it. And Lord Krishna didn't say how to do it in the Gita. He gave it personally to his disciples. And that is the frustrating thing, you are reading those scriptures. And obviously certain things, you understand. Not to lie, not to cheat, not to steal, not to be greedy, and to love your neighbor and to love God and all those things. But how to go within, they do not tell you. It's very frustrating. They do not tell you. Even Patanjali, the great master who wrote the Yoga Sutras, all the principles are there. First of all, the definition of yoga, meaning union with God. What is it? The principle is to still the waves of consciousness. That leads to union with God. Wonderful. How? He didn't say. He did not give the techniques. And this is exactly the same thing as you read in the Bible, in the Old Testament. Be still and know that I am God. It's exactly the same. But the Bible too does not say how to do it. And so the next important point in Master's teachings is how? How to do it. And he gave two of the most important keys. One is, of course, interiorization, right? The other point is energy. That's the key. That's the scientific key. And that knowledge was lost in the Dark Ages. I'm talking now about the cycles of civilization. In the darkest age, which is past, man had lost the knowledge of the subtle forces of energy, electricity. And therefore, this deep science was lost. And now, through the knowledge of energy again, electricity, we use electricity for whenever we need it, turn it off when you don't need it. So now we can understand again that principle that all our inner organs, our faculties, the heart, the brain, everything is operated by energy, prana. Call it electricity if you like. And the Master said, in a normal waking consciousness, that energy from the brain through the spine, through this nervous system, that energy goes out into the body. It operates the senses, and we have sensory perception. And the Master said, the energy, your consciousness is where the energy is. So the principle is very scientific and very simple, namely, learn to withdraw that energy inside, where God is waiting for you. And so that is why the Master said, Kriya Yoga, controlling the mind directly through the life force, meaning through that energy, is the easiest, most effective, and most scientific avenue of approach to the infinite. That's the key. Now that is listed in the scriptures. You have it in the Bible. The most important commandment in the Bible in the Old Testament, and the same thing, the most important commandment in the New Testament is what? You all know it. Love God, isn't it? With all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength. And there it is. Strength. It's energy. And they do not know it. You ask those people who are preaching about highest commandment, they do not know what it means to love God with your energy. And this is exactly the principle of yoga. The simple commandment is, in one sentence, the whole principle of Raja Yoga or Kriya Yoga. Meaning all the faculties, all your heart, the feeling, the mind, energy, directed inward, and there is God waiting for you. And that's exactly the same thing as the Master said in his autobiography. Samadhi, union with God. What is it? Literally, it means to direct together. To direct together the faculties and lead them inside. There is God. Now, all the religions are really based on this one principle. Communion with God, leading to union with God. And most people do not know it because they think communion is a ritual. You have it in Christianity, isn't it? Holy Communion. It's a symbol. The wine and the bread is a symbol to unite yourself with cosmic vibration of Om, the Holy Ghost, and Christ consciousness. In India, same thing. Same thing. Fire ceremony, it means throwing ghee, butter into the fire, meaning it is a symbol of uniting the little energy, the little consciousness with the infinite. And they do not know what it stands for, those rituals. I've asked, I was in India, I have some priests who perform these rituals. I said, what does it mean? It's a ritual. They do not know. And that is why Master said, I do not give you any rituals, because I give you the techniques, and they are doing the real thing. Those things which the rituals only symbolize. Do you realize what Master gave us? But in this, he taught us the oneness of the religions. There's only one religion. Superficially, yeah, there are different dogmas, different approaches, and different ceremonies, and so on. But the essence, the esoteric essence of all the religions is the same. And that is why we have among our members, we have Jews, we have Christians, we have Hindus, we have Muslims, we have Buddhists, we have Sikhs, we have Jains, and so on. And they all say, through these teachings, I have gained a deeper understanding and a deeper appreciation of my own religion. So Master taught union of religion. No more separation. It's oneness. There's only one God. Another important point, that is devotion. And devotion, I'll give you a quotation from the Bhagavad Gita, which Master very often quoted. From birth, all creatures are immersed in delusion because of subjection to desire and hate, or likes and dislikes, the pair of opposites that spring from Maya. Now, there again you have Maya. There again you have duality, isn't it? Good and bad, pleasant and painful, constantly. Sensory impressions from birth. The baby cries when something is painful, or enjoys it when it is pleasant. Now, it is our feeling which reacts to all the sensations and all the outer experiences and what people do and what people say and the whole thing. And that way we are constantly thrown through that feeling, through those reactions. We are thrown into the concrete mixer of the world. Constantly agitated. No peace. No perception of God. That's all the Master said. Why not use that feeling and channel it directed towards God? Therefore you become more free from, you don't take the drama too seriously. And you give that feeling to God. And He will respond just as we respond when somebody comes and says, I love you. Isn't it? Now, I want to go into a little more into this principle. Let's look at the various religious practices. What do people do? They go to church, listen to a sermon, there's some music, and there's some ceremonies, Holy Mass and things like that. In India, same thing. People go to a temple, priests perform some rituals, some ceremonies, some pujas, and so on. Where's the mind? It goes out, isn't it? It goes out. And where is God? Inside. And then there are the things, this is very popular in India, for instance, listening to stories about Krishna and the various saints. In Christianity, you have the same thing. In Judaism, you have the same thing, stories of the Bible, stories of Jesus, stories of the Jews, how God took care of them, freeing them from slavery and all that sort of thing. Where's the mind? Goes out visualizing external events. Or mental worship, and that is called in Christianity meditation, namely visualizing an event, a drama of the Bible, let's say the birth of Christ, with Joseph and Mary and the baby and the shepherds and the angels and all that sort of thing. Whole drama. Or in India, mental worship, mentally visualizing the whole ceremony of worship in a temple. Where's the mind? In all these activities, out, visualizing an outer event, isn't it? Now please understand, I'm not saying that is wrong. That is a necessary phase to get us into the habit of thinking of spiritual things instead of being totally involved in material pursuits and activities. But this is only the first phase. The second phase then is going inward into the inner stillness, an inner communion with God. And that phase is called in Christian terminology contemplation. And that phase is called in yoga terminology meditation. Going inward into the inner stillness and there gradually perceive God. But the big question is now, how? And I come now to a very, very important point because you have the techniques. And now it depends on, first of all, the first requirement is that you really are convinced that what you are seeking, that the infinite fulfillment that you have been seeking for eons is inside. And then comes energy control, to lead the energy inside. Now, the techniques that the Master gave us, they will do the job. You have reviewed Hong Sau technique today, isn't it? That technique alone will do it if you practice correctly. It is such as simple as it seems to be. It is such a powerful technique. It's one of the old techniques which came back down from the higher ages. That technique alone will do it, if you practice correctly. Now comes the point. You probably have heard that one of the big hurdles is that you want to control the breath, right? And you shouldn't. You breathe naturally as the body needs it, right? And with the Hong Sau, that in itself will do it, because you don't have to think in terms of energy going in. Energy will go in. It will lead you right inside to God. If you don't let the mind go out to external things. And that is why it is so important that you understand, not just intellectually, but really deeply understand that what you want, what you seek is inside. And once you are convinced of that, the mind will go in. It will practice the technique, and the techniques will take you inside, and there God is waiting for you. It is that important. The mind has that tendency for long, long habit to always going out. Why? To seek, because we are used to seeking fulfillment in external things. But once you understand it's inside, then you keep the mind on the technique and it will lead you inside. I want to read you something. This is from a letter which a young girl gave us, wrote to Mother Center. 14 years old. That's all she had when she wrote that letter. Hong Sa technique. Didn't have any Om technique yet, didn't have Kriya yet. Only Hong Sa. First of all, the Hong Sa technique is the best thing that I have ever learned. This is because it affects and changes my whole life. After I practice the Hong Sa technique, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, I feel peaceful. It is not a normal human describable calm. It is the ultimate peaceful calm. No words can describe it. That's God. It is that peace which passes all understanding. As the Bible says, that's an aspect of God. Hong Sa. And then she talks about meditation. It is as if my soul speaks after I practice the Hong Sa technique. Spiritually, I'm much more calm when I meditate. And when I close my eyes and gaze at the third eye, meaning at the Christ center, after practicing the Hong Sa technique, God's big, bright, white light is gazing back at me. Overall, I feel a great peace, which in no other words, in no other way can be expressed except in itself, because there are no words to it. It's beyond ordinary experience and language. It's an aspect of God. Thank you, Self-Realization Fellowship, for allowing me to receive this beautiful technique. Hong Sa, correctly practiced, leads you right to God. And then after the techniques, people are asking, then what do I do? That's when meditation begins. Because then you have made the effort to go inside, and there God is waiting for you. And then when you are in the presence of God, what do? You do not do anything anymore. Because if you want to do something, remember, the actions are done by the faculties, the instruments. The soul doesn't do anything. Now when I say you don't do anything anymore, I'm not saying you go into a passive blank state. When we were sitting with Master, we didn't fall asleep and we didn't jump around. We were absorbed in His presence. So make it very simple in meditation. You are in the presence of God. And then comes what? Self-forgetfulness. No more thinking of what do I get, or straining for experiences. None of that stuff. The self, the ego has to get out. There is a total self-abandonment. There is only one thing, you, my God. And I'm not talking about experiences in the terms of phenomena, psychic phenomena, and all kinds of rubbish, you know. Master said it is not a circus. You have TV for that? We see this from letters that are coming in. Again and again, people do not understand. They are trying to force an experience. If you try to force, you'll never get it, not the real thing. Peace. Look for God in the essential aspects as peace, as light, not picture shows, the light of God, or Om, or love, or joy. And if you have any of those aspects, this is God, then you give yourself to that. Do you understand? And that is why Master said, he said it most perfectly, just lose yourself in your love for God. No more thought of self, only you. If you think of self, you're not meditating. Because meditation means concentration on God to the exclusion of everything else. That means no ego. And then sometimes it happens that nothing happens, right? There's nothing. Darkness. And people say, well, I'm not getting anything. It's useless. I'm not worth anything. Not to. Because this is necessary. Things like that are necessary when God doesn't seem to respond. And I'm quoting now Gyanamata, that great disciple of Master, because she went through, all of us went through periods like that. And she said, do not mind his silence. Meaning if there is no tangible response. Remember, she said, he is listening. He knows what you are giving. And through that, we are learning, you know what we are learning? Pure love, unconditional love. That's why Jesus said, the pure in heart shall see God. What does it mean, the pure heart? A heart that is without selfishness. And so Gyanamata said, I want to love God as he loves and as his saints love. Namely, without asking anything in return. Giving, loving, not asking for anything. You know, you have to be careful of how you understand this. And yesterday we heard Master's voice, the tape, saying, your today's meditation should be better than yesterday's, and tomorrow's better than today's. Personally, I don't think he meant that literally. Because I know from my own experience, I know from the experience of the others, it just doesn't work that way. There are times when it's easy to meditate, and there's times when it's very hard, and nothing happens. And people think then I'm not progressing. You are progressing because you are making the effort. You are learning unconditional love. You are learning to love, to make an effort, to give to God without asking anything in return. It is an absolute necessity that we are going through periods like that. And so when Master said your every meditation should be better, he simply meant, this is my interpretation. I may be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong, not in this particular thing. He meant, don't go through a period of mechanical process of so-called meditation. Put your heart into it. Put your meaning into it. Be sincere. All right. Another point. And my time is running out, so I have to, just to give you a basic principle. Obviously, we cannot meditate all the time. We have our duties, we have our work to do, we have our role, the outer role to play. And that too is part of the spiritual discipline. And that is why Master says our spiritual and material duties should work together, like two stallions, pulling the car of life harmoniously and uniformly to one happy goal. And then he said, in explaining, all outer duties should be spiritualized. That is, everything should be done with the consciousness of God within. You know, Master, it is so clear, so precise. What does he mean with that? I'll give you an illustration. I came to America to study under Frank Lloyd Wright, who was the famous architect at that time. And I watched him. He was the king of architecture, great genius. And I watched him. Is he happy? And I found he was not. Frustrated. And then I realized he had been seeking happiness, fulfillment through fame and through his creative ability. And you know, I said before, you cannot find the ultimate fulfillment in anything in this world. And that includes our work, no matter how important or how great it is. You cannot find it there because it isn't there. And then I thought back. I had been in Italy, and I saw those wonderful paintings of Fra Angelico, great painter in the 15th century. And he was a very spiritual man, a very great devotee of God. And it was said when he was painting his paintings of Christ and the saints and so on, tears of devotion were streaming from his eyes. And I thought, that's it. That is what Master teaches. Now, I'm not saying that when you work you have to cry, you know. I don't mean that. But that Fra Angelico, he found the fulfillment inside through God. And his painting, he didn't do that for fame. It was a love offering to God. And that is what you have to do. It doesn't matter what you do, what your occupation is. God couldn't care less. But once in a while, you stop just for a moment and inwardly say, I do this for you. And it is spiritualized. You become God-centered, even in the midst of your work. And I know I had a very interesting experience when I was in India one time. Usually I have some lecture tours when I'm in India. And so I was in that particular city in South India. And I gave a public lecture and then classes and so on. And then afterwards I had a day of interviews. And there was a man who came, he was very simply dressed, very humble, and yet there was a dignity in that man. And he said, I heard you speak. And I want you to help me to bring God more into my life. That's all we talked. When he left, after he left, the monk who was coordinating the interviews came to me and he said, I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you who that man was because we have so many people and I was busy there. Did he tell you who he was? I said, no, we didn't talk about that. He said, you know who that is? He's one of the top generals of the Indian army. I thought, there it is. Outwardly, tough, disciplined, efficient, general. Inside, a humble devotee of God. And that is the key. That's how you spiritualize your life. And it doesn't matter what the role is. When you look at the different saints of the different religions through the centuries, you'll find them in any category of occupation, of social level, from kings to beggars, monastics, householders. It was not the external which made them saints. It was the inner consciousness. There was one woman in the 14th century, Christian saint. She had 14 children. You know, usually when you think when a person has 14 children, that's a lot of, Saint. It doesn't matter what the outer role is. It's the inner consciousness. All right. I have time for a couple stories, right, Master? There was one that was recently printed in a magazine. And that was when Master was lecturing in the 20s throughout the country. And in one city, there was a man who was an executive, whatever, on a big business, one of his students, and he invited Master to come to his office. And he said, I have an employee who is interested in this sort of thing. And so Master went to that office, and that man introduced his employee. And that employee said, I would like to know more about yoga. What is there? I've heard it's possible to separate the soul from the body. Is that true? And Master said, yes, that's true. Could I see a demonstration of that? And the Master saw that the man is sincere, and he said, well, all right. And there was a Davenport in that office, and Master laid himself down on that Davenport and did some deep, slow breathing, and after about 5 minutes, the life started to withdraw, and the blood started to withdraw, and breath stopped, and they were frightened to death because they thought, now we have a corpse in our hand. And so they thought, what am I going to do? Call the police? And then they said, come back. The demonstration is successful. And then Master started to breathe again, slowly, deeply, and blood came back, and Master got up, smiling, and said, there it is. I didn't like that story. You know why? Because there are other stories which are a little different, or quite different. There's the one which his younger brother told us. When Master was a teenager, he was the first year in college. And he was still Mukunda. And one time when the family was together eating, Mukunda fell over. No breath. They checked. No heartbeat. They frantically called the doctor, sent for the doctor. And all the time until the doctor came, no breath, no heartbeat. And then finally the doctor came, examined him. He said, all the life is gone. All the functions have stopped. He's dead. And then they were frantic. And there was an old woman who was in the family who was taking care of the children, the younger children. And she used to scold Mukunda because she felt he was meditating too much, and she didn't like that he constantly brought his friends home for meals and so on. And she said, Mukunda, come back, I'll never scold you again. The master sat up and laughed, so you never scold me again? He didn't have to lie down for 5 minutes doing deep breathing exercises. There was instant shutting off of all the vital functions and instant coming back. Tell you another one. That happened in 1950 when Master was out in the desert working on his writings, and on weekends he used to call some of the monks out so that we had an opportunity to see him. And so it was Saturday morning, and the monks were working outside on the grounds. Master was inside the house. And I heard Master call from inside, from a window, one of the monks. When I saw how that monk was approaching the window and where I was, I couldn't see the window. I couldn't see Master, but I could see that monk. And so I heard Master talking to him. And then I saw how the expression on the face of that monk changed. And I didn't want to go because I felt it was none of my business, but I knew something is happening. And so it went on for quite some time. But then Master's voice stopped, and that monk turned away, and he came slowly towards me, and still he had that expression on his face. I said, what happened? He said, didn't you see Master? I said, no, I was around the corner. I couldn't see him, but I could see you. He said, this is the strangest thing. There he was at the window talking to me, and then suddenly that body dissolved. There was no body there anymore. There was just light. And the voice came just as before, came out of that light. And he said for quite some time. And then at the end, that light condensed again, and the body was there again. Now when you see those different stories, I thought Master acted differently with different people, according to their understanding or their need. And when I heard about that body dissolved and became just light, I thought there was a great master in India in the 15th century. Master quoted him or mentioned him in the autobiography several times, Kabir, great saint. And Kabir said, a master, even though he has a human body, he should not be considered just or only as a human being, because he takes on that body in order so that we can make the contact. But he is not that body. He is the light of God. He is Om. He is verily the infinite consciousness of God. But as Marini Mata said yesterday, he was very human, isn't it? In order to be approachable. I'll tell you another story. That was also at the time, 1950, when Master was out in the desert. We had a man who was in charge of our construction projects. Very, very nice man. Anderson. We called him Andy Anderson. And he had met Master several times, and he also had gone out to the desert and had met him out there. But he had a problem. He had some trouble with the family, in-laws, and because he was a very sensitive man, he started drinking. And a couple of times when he came on a job, he was not quite sober. And so this one morning, when he came to work, I had to give him a message from Master. I said, Andy, Master sent word. He would like you to go out to the desert. He wants to see you. And he said, okay. And he got into the car and drove off. A couple of days later, he came back. And he told me what happened. He said, you know, when you told me Master wants to see me, I was scared. Because I know he is omniscient and he knows about my drinking habit. And I was afraid that he would scold me, or worse, dismiss me. And so he said, in order to have courage to meet him, I started drinking. And he said, I drank all the way out to the desert. It's a 4-hour trip. And he said, when I arrived at Master's place, I was drunk. Then I got out of the car, and as I got out of the car, Master came out of the house. He must have known that I was coming. Then he said, and then Master came towards me and embraced me. There was no scolding. And then he said, can you imagine? I was drunk. And he embraced me. And then he couldn't take it. He broke down and wept, overwhelmed by the thought of Master's love and compassion. And so, I want to go back now to what I said in meditation. When you're finished with your techniques and your insight. And I said, then God is there. And if the word God is too impersonal for you, put Master there. Because he is a divine incarnation. And the Master said, the Guru is always present in the Christ center of his disciples. And then when I said, you give yourself to God, you give yourself to Master. You may not see him, most likely you won't see him, but he's there. He's there. Anytime you go into meditation, anytime you think of him deeply, he is there. And then, it's very difficult to say because, or from that last story, maybe you understand. He gave us a new concept of God through his own example, being one with God, and the way he behaved with his utter compassion and love, unconditional love. He gave us a concept of God that is not a cruel judge who is throwing us into hell. It's a God of love, God of compassion, God of bliss. And so you go to Master, and as you've seen, you don't have to be perfect to go to him. He understands. And as he said, if you're mixing with bad company, you're affected. If you're mixing with good people, you become good. And if you're mixing with God and Guru in meditation, you become divine. And so think of that. When we say meditation, so many times people just think you're going through a process of mechanics, isn't it? No. You practice the techniques to go inside. And there is God, and there's Guru, and there you are. And you give, you're lost in the thought of that one who is there. I'm talking now figure of speech, with wide open arms to receive you as his own. As his own. Feel that. As Marinima yesterday quoted Ganamata saying, I feel he came for me. Make it personal. Make it personal. He came for me. He came for you. And that is meditation. From then on, it is his grace. You cannot do anything anymore. From then on, it is his grace. And the more trusting you are, and the more you know, the more you feel, I can give myself, I can completely surrender myself to that one. The more you can do that, the more he is able to take you into his arms. All right. God bless you.